for research is Alzheimer's and dementia and why women are affected at such a higher percentage than men. And it's not because we live longer, but really those changes are you begin to see those changes starting out in the perimenopause transition.
So really, this should be addressed before you completely run out of it. You don't wait until you're in your 50s to address these changes. Welcome to the More Than a Pretty Face podcast, where we go more than skin deep into the science of beauty, health, and wellness so you can feel your best at every age. I'm your host, Dr. Azadeh Shirazi, and today we're going to be talking about menopause and perimenopause and hormones and how that affects your skin, but also your entire body. And it's a must listen for every woman out there. I'm so honored to have the nation's leading expert on menopause and perimenopause joining us today on the podcast so that our audience really learns how to navigate their hormonal climate throughout their life, because as you guys may know, menopause hits you at right around age 51, but the symptoms of perimenopause can start as early as in your 30s. And Dr. Mary Claire is going to go into detail about that. But I think this is such an important topic and something that many women are not aware, because by the time you hit menopause in your 50s or in your early 50s, you may have missed out on a lot of the benefits that you could have received starting hormones sooner than that. And I'm so excited to have a board-certified OBGYN and menopause hormone specialist on the podcast today so that our audience can be better informed at navigating their hormonal climates through every decade of life. From Galveston, Texas, our guest is joining us. She is not only a board-certified OBGYN, but she is also a best-selling author and the creator of the Galveston diet, which I'm so excited to hear about. She has dedicated her career to empowering women to learn more about their hormones in order to improve the quality of their life. Please help me welcome Dr. Mary Claire Haver. Hi.
Hi, so happy to be here. Love sharing the menopause message.
I know, and I'm so inspired by you. You know, I feel like traditionally, even as a physician, we never got the proper training to even learn about hormones. It was just something that women had to deal with. And I know I see a lot of patients in my practice that come in that are having all kinds of issues, and they're just given a pill to sleep, Adderall for focus, mood booster pill, but no one's really addressing the bottom line, which is what is happening with their hormonal climate.
Yeah. And it's really a systemic issue. I think, everyone's relying on their training and education. And unfortunately, the current medical system was really built to fail the menopausal woman. And we receive, like you said, in medical school, maybe an hour lecture. I mean, I went through 30 years ago, and then in my OB-GYN residency, and even as a program director until 2018, we had no menopause clinics, no focus specific, instruction on how to care for the menopausal woman. We were kind of taught about menopause a little bit, but like perimenopause, how to recognize it, how different the expressions could be, all the organ systems that might be affected, nothing.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I've recently learned just from following you, by the way, your content is so good. I mean, thank you so much for delivering such valuable information. But a lot of these symptoms that can actually start in your 30s. Some of these hormonal changes start way before. I mean, I used to think, oh, menopause, that's like in your 50s. You don't even worry about that. But no, it's kind of like this gradual process. So tell us a little bit about some of the changes that happen starting in the third decade of life.
So why it starts so young and what is actually happening. Let's go down to the root cause. I don't love that term. It really does make sense here. Most people don't understand, even physicians, that females are born with all of their egg supply. When we're embryos, they start deteriorating when we're 5 months in utero. By the time we're 30, we are down to 90% of our egg supply. And by the time we're 40, we're down to about 3% on average. Then we run out of eggs, either through the process of ovulation or just atresia, what we call it, deterioration with age. That's it. There goes not all, but the 99% of the hormone production from the ovaries for the rest of our lives, which could be 30 to 40 years, depending on how long you live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we're in that 90% range, to absolute menopause, which is the end of hormonal production from the ovaries, you can start having symptoms from estrogen deprivation. It's not like one day you wake up and the ovaries are dead. It is a very dramatic, tumultuous process of rise and decline, like a roller coaster on its way down. And
Mm-hmm.
so you could have symptoms so average age of menopause is 51.
Mm-hmm.
Normal menopause is still 45 to 55. So perimenopause begins when you start seeing symptoms 7 to 10 years before that menopause. So just do the math. 45 minus 10 is 35.
Yeah. So what are the symptoms? That's a great point that you're in. What should people look
So
for?
there are the symptoms that you and I were taught in medical school that we know how to recognize: hot flashes, night sweats, osteoporosis, vaginal dryness. Those are kind of the classical symptoms of menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And really the ones that if it had what education I did have focused on those, and the medication and treatments that were developed focused on relieving those symptoms. What we know now in modern menopause medicine is that there are estrogen, testosterone receptors in almost every organ system of our body. And as those levels start declining, we see big, scary, dramatic changes in brains, bones, kidneys, lungs, teeth, hair, skin, genital urinary system. There is nothing that's left off the table. So actually the symptom profile is huge. So when we talk in terms of skin, mouth, eyes, dry skin, we have decrease of mucus production, decrease of oil production, thinning of the skin, loss of collagen, brain function begins to decline. The brain fog is real, and it's
real. Yeah.
it's inflammation in the brain due to the loss of estrogen. We see massive deterioration in our bone density. Begin,
Mm-hmm.
in the first 5 years of menopause, we lose about 10% of our bone density. And so it's really amazing how fast these changes happen, not just related to age, but to estrogen deprivation.
Now, do you start to see these changes? And I don't know if there's been studies looking at, for example, CTs or whatnot, looking at bone or looking at the, other organs, starting as the estrogen. Is there like a threshold it hits, and then you really start to see dramatic changes? Is it like right at 51 when you're
So
completely out of hormones?
it depends on what age you would begin your menopause. So we have to do it in relation to when your natural menopause would be. So some of the best work on the brain has been done by Lisa Mosconi out of Cornell. And she wrote the Double X Brain, and just now published, or coming out very soon, I think in January, is the Menopause Brain, where her research funds CT and PET scans of the brain of women
Mhm.
pre, peri, and post-menopause, and
How
look at
interesting.
the
Yeah.
changes. And it is absolutely phenomenal. The core of her research is Alzheimer's and dementia, and why women are affected at such a higher percentage than men. And it's not because we live longer. That has nothing to do
Right.
with it. The changes associated, well, a little bit to do with it, but really those changes are you begin to see those changes starting out in the perimenopause transition.
So really, this should be addressed before you completely run out
Yeah.
of it. You don't wait until you're in your 50s to address these changes, because by then, some of those changes you've lost some of those functions and some of the organ vitalities. Now, what can women do? Is there a blood test, or what do you like if you have somebody that comes in, maybe 30s or early 40s that is maybe experiencing some brain fog, feeling tired, just can't sleep or anxious? Like what do you do in terms of blood work?
Sure. So when we start addressing, so as far as blood work, I listen to the patient. I discuss her symptoms. I have kind of a checklist. They're doing paperwork like most of us have before they even get to me. And I have a menopausal scoring system that was developed by the Australasian Menopause Society off of the green scale. This stuff's been around since the 70s, but no one was utilizing it. And so basically, are you having brain fog? Are you having, vaginal dryness? It's a list of about 30 symptoms. That tells me right away she's more than likely suffering from perimenopause. So when I'm doing blood work, I'm ruling out hypothyroidism, autoimmune disease. Very rarely am I having to do hormone levels. Maybe an FSH if she's had a hysterectomy and I can't use her period to help guide me. But if you just listen to the patient and believe her and not attribute everything to it's all in her head or psychological symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of aging, I start therapy immediately. Now, when I say therapy, not everyone is going to be a candidate for hormone replacement therapy or want it. When I talk about menopause care, probably the same way you talk about skincare, it's more than just one cream, one potion, one magic. It is a toolbox. So,
Mhm.
nutrition, exercise, stress reduction, sleep, stop smoking, get moving. All of those things are just as important. Hormone replacement therapy, non-hormonal treatments for these symptoms, and possible supplementation if there's any deficits there.
I love that because all those factors are affecting your hormone levels, right? So maybe if you make some of those lifestyle changes or some of the diet changes, you can actually boost your own natural estrogen. So maybe you don't have to go on hormone replacement.
You can do that for a while, but eventually your ovaries will fail. No one gets out of this. Menopause is not optional. So you definitely, how you kind of show up in perimenopause health-wise and your habits is kind of probably going to help define some of your course and how bad your symptoms are and how bad you're going to suffer. So one of the latest studies, one of the most exciting things is showing that insulin resistance dramatically goes up with estrogen depletion, and replacing that estrogen is helpful. And
Mhm.
so knowing ahead of time in your 30s that you're going to be at higher risk for insulin resistance and diabetes, and getting ahead of that with nutrition and exercise habits, can really change the course of your health and life for long term.
So now let's say you're in your 40s, not quite 50, 51, and the symptoms are getting, even more pronounced. Maybe at this point you're having hot flashes or whatnot. Tell us about sort of this new wave of bioidentical hormones, because I know the original study that was done looked at like
Premarin,
conjugated
yeah,
Premarin,
conjugated.
like synthetic hormones, but now it's the bioidentical hormones that are becoming major players, and
So
how that's different and how that's kind of changed.
So estrogen first came out on the market in the 40s, I think, and a lot of it was synthetic. In the 70s, there was a book, Feminine Forever, and it was kind of icky, but it was like get your wife back kind of movement, keep her sexy forever. But it really got a lot of women on estrogen only hormone therapy. Well, we realized quickly that when you don't give a woman progesterone with estrogen and she has a uterus, you put her at risk for endometrial hyperplasia and cancer. So then we had to add a progestin. So the next wave was Premarin was ever able to be developed, which comes from the urine of pregnant horses, Premarin, pregnant Mary.
Mhm.
And it's a combination of 10 different estrogens. They are natural, but I'm not super happy ethically with how they get the urine of the horse. And you can go look into that. So I really
Oh,
don't.
wow.
The progestin combined with that is medroxyprogesterone acetate, or Provera, which is synthetic. So not to like beat up on synthetic versus natural, everything has to go to the lab for processing. We're not rubbing yams on ourselves and making estrogen, right? But if you look at the modern prescribing practices and the newer studies coming out and looking at observational studies, things that are bioidentical just means it's chemically identical to what your body naturally made. So that would be 17 beta hydroxyestradiol. That is what your ovaries make. Okay. There's also estriol, which is what our placentas make in pregnancy if you're ever pregnant. And there's estrone, which is usually made in the periphery and fat cells from the conversion of testosterone. Very long explanation. So those are kind of your top three bioidenticals. I choose when I'm doing menopausal hormone therapy to give the patients back what their ovaries used to make, which is estradiol.
I see.
And fortunately, I'm able to find that in regulated versions, multiple strains, oral, non-oral, and we can get into why those are pretty different later. And for progesterone, I give them progesterone, not progestins. So the big umbrella is progestogen, which is synthetic and natural. And so I do tend to stick to natural.
Hmm. Yeah, and so let's talk about, with estrogen. I mean, now when I see women in their 30s or 40s experiencing hair loss and dry skin, I automatically say, see your GYN because you could be having some of these hormonal changes. So
Mhm.
is that something that's reasonable to give? How do you decide
Yeah,
who gets
you
it and
can
who doesn't?
absolutely begin treating a patient in their perimenopause. We don't have to wait till full menopause. You don't have to go a year without a period before you're a candidate for menopausal hormone therapy. And the hormone therapy and perimenopause may look like different things. The biggest difference between what you would think of as a birth control pill and what you think of as menopause hormone therapy is dose. Birth
Mm.
control pills were developed to suppress ovulation so you don't get pregnant. Okay. We use them to treat a million other things, cramps, acne. You probably use it in your practice, for acne for younger patients.
Hmm.
Um, then there's high dose, medium dose, low dose. Right under low dose is high dose menopause hormone therapy.
I see.
It's
So it's
really
very little amounts of
kind of a
estrogen.
continuum. And so it's about a quarter. If you look at average, it's about half to a quarter of the dose of what you would need to suppress ovulation versus what you would need to stop a hot flash, which is why
Mm.
these two things were developed. And so if my patient in perimenopause is suffering and she's having irregular periods, heavy periods, acne cramps, something I feel like a higher dose, I need to suppress her ovulation so that we can get this combined benefit, I'm going to go with those higher doses versus she's kind of in late perimenopause. She's really having hot flashes, night sweats. I'm just giving her a patch in the progesterone, in the lower doses that we could continue long term.
Now, what about like effects on the hair? Is the birth control, for example, or the skin? Because we know that estrogen is so important for collagen production, hair restoration, and so protective of hair. Does birth control pills, is that more estrogen? So is that better? Do you see
So
more
it depends.
benefits or not
There's
necessarily?
so many different for hair, specifically when we're talking about hair or skin, we're talking about high androgen states, which could lead to male pattern baldness, where you're losing
Hmm.
the temporal area. Well, you can talk more about this, and acne. So that's kind of one area versus female pattern hair loss, which is different, where you see the widening of the part in general. Uh,
Hmm.
and kind of a diffused hair loss. And so, I always tell patients or, people who follow me, if you do some simple things and it's not working, go see a dermatologist. There's a million reasons why you could be losing hair, nutrition deficiencies, male pattern, female pattern, et cetera. And we want to make sure we're not missing an autoimmune disease or fungus or
Sure.
so, go to the expert to figure this out. And Rogaine's not going to work for everyone. All these over-the-counter things, the vitamins, they're great, but it may not be what you need. So let's go figure out what's going on before we, especially if it's severe, uh,
Hmm.
before we invest any more money in these cures to see what happens. And so for hormone therapy, it depends. If it's androgen driven, yes, then, birth control pills, menopause hormone therapy might be helpful. If it's female pattern hair loss, it's kind of unknown. I just wrote the chapter on that in the book, and it's like, it might respond, it might not. We really don't know. It's probably better to do red light therapy or something to increase blood flow to the scalp, to try to get the hair follicle healthier, at that time. But it's such a pain point for patients.
Yes, it's really complicated because then, that whole estrogen, progesterone, that could also affect your
Right. And
androgen
different
dominance, right?
progestins
Right.
act
Yeah,
differently. So some progestins that are found in different birth control pills might be better for acne
that's
or
right. Or hair loss, yeah, than others. Yeah.
so I tell my patients a lot of this is trial and error. We do not know how your body's going to react. So we just kind of have to make an educated, guess almost, and then go from there.
So what about PCOS? I mean, is that part of the whole perimenopause
So,
realm, or is that a completely
so
different?
probably 80% of PCOS, looks just like perimenopause. It literally is very, very similar in what your cycles are doing, how your body's reacting to what's going on. So actually have a blog about this with a spreadsheet where I made PCOS, perimenopause, and check boxes. So you could be, it's
Right.
really hard for a woman who's dealt with PCOS her whole life to ever, and I know this because I am a, thin prototype PCOS patient,
Mm.
whole life. And so I really gaslit myself for a while in perimenopause because my
You
brother
just
had,
assumed it's PCOS.
I was like, you're never going to be regular. What's going on? You're not sleeping because you're depressed, all this stuff. And
Oh.
then I was like, wait a minute. I'm menopausal. Like,
Because I think that a lot of people do fall into that trap thinking that it is PCOS, but it ends up not being, and being perimenopause. So I didn't actually realize the symptoms overlapped so much.
so much, probably 80% of the symptoms will overlap.
So
Mm-hmm.
tell us a little bit about PCOS. I mean, you expect to have fertility issues? Because I just see acne and
Right.
hair loss and increased facial hair. But what are some of the symptoms women should be looking out
So
for?
it can start as early as adolescence. So mine kind of began, I was in medical school when we figured it out. And I was
Mm.
thin. I was very thin. And so I was very, very irregular. Like I was skipping 3, 4, 5 months periods at a time. I had signs of high androgens with the acne, hair growth, everything. I'm Cajun. I have dark hair. I just thought that was my, I was a cheerleader in high school and I would have to go get waxed because I couldn't wear the short skirts because where my
Oh,
growing was halfway down my legs,
uh-huh.
and so they didn't have I couldn't afford all that back then. I just remember like laying on that table with this woman and ripping wax off that
Oh.
I wouldn't get ingrowns. So that was kind of
Oh.
my presentation. And then of course, once I decided to start a family, I had major fertility issues. So both of my children, I've had 2 miscarriages, 4 pregnancies with
Mhm.
assisted
Wow.
ART, lost 2, and then I have 2 healthy kids. So very, very fortunate that I was able to kind of get through that. And then thought about trying one more time and then realized I just wanted the oxygen. We didn't want another baby. So,
That's a lot to go through, and I think it's really challenging when you don't know where to start. What what is the treatment for PCOS? What are your top
so
3 treatments?
it's kind of a misnomer, and we calling it polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is just a symptom. And not everyone with with the endocrinology of PCOS actually has polycystic ovaries. Really, what's happening is insulin resistance. You are born with a form of insulin resistance where your insulin levels are running so high, it's affecting the ovary's ability to ovulate regularly. And it's much, if you're heavier, it's more related to your body mass and your fat mass associated with insulin resistance. And someone who's thinner, it's more of an inflammatory and maybe a broken receptor, we think. And
Mm.
so the treatment, like for me, if you were heavy, a lot of people can cure their PCOS with nutrition and exercise, and fat loss in the right places. And but that's really hard to do. But
Unless
there's
you're on Ozempic, are
Right.
they
Well,
doing
now with Ozempic, like what I'm waiting for is all of the unplanned pregnancies with the women on Ozempic who were
Oh,
infertile, and now they're going to be fertile.
because
So
just from losing weight.
when the big wave of gastric bypass came through, we were seeing
Uh-huh.
one pregnancy after another,
Is
and they
that
were
right, huh?
planned, and they hadn't reached their year of stability. And so it was really, really, it was hard as an obstetrician to keep her healthy and get her all her nutrients in while she's still healing from this surgery. When her gastric bypass surgeon forgot to tell her you need birth control like this first year until you stabilize. So we're waiting. I'm not doing obstetrics anymore. I've passed that baton, but I'm waiting to hear about all the Ozempic pregnancies coming out. I'm sure it's
Wow.
coming.
Hmm.
So
So weight loss, and then
So
what other
weight loss, and
treatments?
then, like me in the thin case. So what if you lose all the weight or you can't lose any more weight? What do you do? Do you walk around with a testosterone level of 90 and all these symptoms and run the risk of endometrial hyperplasia? No. So I chose birth control pills, which was a wonderful option for me. I was in medical school. I did not want to be pregnant. I wanted to get my cycles regular. I was having acne. It literally cleared all of my symptoms up. In the background, I was still insulin resistant. So I watched my diet and did all the things, avoided the sugars and exercise. But it really was helpful for me and for so many patients. They do really, really well on a birth control pill just to suppress the whole system. And then when they're ready to start a family, we don't waste much time. We know immediately they might have trouble. But a lot of PCOS patients will kind of have this little window of fertility right when they get off the pill. So
Ah,
they take
like
advantage of
within the
that.
first 3 months, like getting
Mhm.
off, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, how interesting. Oh, well, that's really interesting. So my other question is, so there's a lot of controversy, right? Because we know all the protective benefits of estrogen for almost every organ system. But what are the drawbacks? Like, then I hear people, well, if you take estrogen, you're going to get cancer, you're going to get breast cancer, you're going to get
Sure. Yeah.
tumors, you're going to have a heart attack. Like, what are
So
the
the
drawbacks?
WHI really screwed women in America, like in the world. The Women's Health Initiative really meant well. It was a study that they knew from observational data that women who were on menopause hormone therapy beginning in their 50s had a lower incidence of heart disease. And so the study was designed to say, well, is that just because they're healthier and they're better off socioeconomically? They go to the doctor, they get, they're more likely to be healthy and have less heart disease, or is this really due to the hormone therapy? So the only way to prove these things is with a randomized controlled, placebo-controlled study. So that was the
Mhm.
first one like this of its kind, and they used Premarin. if you had a hysterectomy, you got Premarin. If you didn't, Prempro versus placebo in both arms. So we had 4 arms go
Mm-hmm.
and groups of women. And so found when they started, the average age was 63. Okay. Because
Oh,
they were trying to prove
that's
heart,
way later than women
trying
starting
to
now,
prove heart
right?
disease, right? The
Yeah.
end, the goal was, does she have heart disease? They were also tracking breast cancer. So the Prempro arm stopped after 3 years, maybe, because they did see a non-statistically significant increase. They went from 4 out of 1,000 women per year to 5 out of 1,000 women per year of breast cancer. So that arm stopped immediately. The headlines went out, estrogen causes breast cancer, 80% of hormone therapy prescriptions stopped immediately. The calls were going crazy in the doctor's offices, like, oh my God, you're trying to kill me. And it was the #1 health news story in 2002, was the Women's Health Initiative. What they found was no change in heart disease, none, starting at 63. And then they found the estrogen only arm continued for 2 or 3 more years. They found they had a decreased risk of breast cancer
Oh,
versus,
really?
yeah, it was protective. So what it actually was not the estrogen, was probably the Provera that was increasing the risk of breast cancer.
The progesterone.
The progesterone. So
Oh,
yeah,
just
so
like
that
estrogen increases
study
your
has
uterine
been
cancers.
reanalyzed, walked back. There's been multiple studies done. The American Heart Association has come out in favor of hormone therapy, but there's some caveats. So it's very nuanced when you talk to a patient. Estrogen is better at protection than cure. Okay.
Mm.
So estrogen is a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory hormone, and it's everywhere in our body. It's protecting our brains, our vascular system, our coronary arteries, our lungs, our kidneys, skin, all of it. When we take it away, the best thing I could ever do is give you back your 25-year-old ovaries. I can't do that. Those are gone. The next best thing is hormone replacement therapy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in the form of estradiol and progesterone. Okay. If we start young, we don't see, and in up to 5 years, there's no increased risk of breast cancer on estrogen and progesterone. Okay. So it was the women who were older. So they felt like they probably had pre-existing disease or were on their way. And estrogen just kind of fed the cancer and made it popped up. So women who were actually diagnosed with breast cancer on hormones versus placebo were diagnosed at a lower stage and lived longer and had a better survival rate.
So potentially it could be helpful.
It is helpful. So we know that starting within 5 years of your menopause, you will have decreased dementia and Alzheimer's. Starting within 10 years of your menopause, you will have decreased death from cardiovascular disease. Hormone therapy is more effective at prevention of coronary artery disease than a statin for women.
Wow. Wow.
For
And they
women.
feel so much better.
God, I mean, we're just giving you back the water you were drinking. But there is a window of opportunity for these long-term health protective benefits. You must start young. Once those disease processes have started, estrogen is not helpful and it might even hurt.
Hmm.
It's prevention rather than cure.
So you're talking start in your 40s?
I would say before in perimenopause, you should start. We know if you start in perimenopause, you're going to have decreased depression. We
Mm-hmm.
know you're going to have decreased collagen loss of your skin. One caveat about systemic therapy for skin is that topical estrogen is better for elastin
So
than
topical estrogen, like as in a cream or as
cream.
in,
Well, cream or whatever form you want to
or
get it on.
patch or something?
Topical meaning you're rubbing it on your face, local therapy.
I see. Lotion. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been using like a 0.3% estriol cream. The studies are old on it, but they're there. And it did show improvement of elastin and collagen where systemic only did the collagen.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then so tell me like progesterone, for example. I have a lot of patients that have gone off their anxiety medication, their sleeping medication, and they swear it's the best sleep they've ever had,
Yeah.
taking progesterone. And so tell us a little bit about progesterone in terms
So
of
progesterone is mandatory if you have a uterus and you're going on estrogen. It's optional if you don't have a uterus or you have a IUD, a Mirena IUD. And the oral micronized progesterone has wonderful sleep benefits. Like if you're not even on estrogen, just progesterone alone at night, you have much better sleep scores than you do off of it. So for my patients, I always tell them, take it at night before you go to bed. keep track of your sleep. You probably see a big difference here. We can go up on the dose if you feel like you need more. It's trial and error again here. It also seems to be really powerful for anxiety. There's something kind of relaxing about it. So especially if you're laying awake at night with racing thoughts and that, you're waking up, that 3 a.m. wake up, 2 a.m. wake up, and your brain is going, progesterone seems to be really protective against that.
Now, do you worry about it causing any issues with breast cancer? Because you'd mentioned before.
In France, they did a study, observational study looking at about 80,000 women, and they stratified breast cancer risk by the type of progestin that they were taking, the synthetics versus and the progesterone. And oral progesterone, micronized progesterone, did not have any association with breast cancer. So I feel very confident that I'm not going to increase your risk by giving you these medications starting young, continuing, as long as the risks outweigh the benefits for you. Now, there's some caveats if you have a family history or you have a genetic disposition. I'm not saying no, you're not a candidate, but that's a deeper discussion with your doctor.
I love that. And you can just take it for as long as you want, right?
As long as for you, the benefits outweigh the risks, you can stay on it forever.
And
no age at which you have to stop anymore.
Okay, wonderful. And then so getting back to, you said the oral form versus the patch. And then what are these pellets I hear about?
Yeah, okay.
Talk about these pellets,
So
there's all these hormone clinics now popping up.
So
all these ER doctors and
so beware
radiologists.
Listen, women are desperate. Women are desperate. And there's different ways to put medicine in your body, right? So when we talk about estrogen therapy, we're talking about systemic versus local. Systemic therapy is higher dosing meant to treat your entire body. Local dosing is just putting the estrogen where you need it, and it doesn't really get absorbed systemically. That would be on the face in a cream or usually vaginal estrogen. And some patients need both systemic and vaginal to get treatment. So when we're talking about systemic therapy, we have oral, like a pill, or we have non-oral. Okay, so anything we ingest orally, right, goes through our gut, gets picked up by the hepatic vein into the portal circulation, and gets processed by the liver. When that bump of daily estrogen hits that liver, we see an uptick in inflammation and clotting factors. It's slight, but it's there. So 7 out of 10,000 women will have a blood clot on oral estrogen that would not have otherwise. We can negate that risk. It's very small with a non-oral formulation. Fortunately, we have patches in multiple strengths and they work for most people. They're FDA approved, so insurance is going to cover it. I'm looking for the most economical, safest option for my patient. So that would be estrogen. Why I avoid the oral formulations if I can. For that. Now, there are other methods to deliver estrogen to your body. There are creams, usually compounded. There's an FDA-approved gel, works great. There's sprays, mists. The UK, they usually do transdermal like creams and stuff. But in the US, we have mostly patches and then the estrogel, but there's no generic for that. The patches are generic. Now, Bioidentical is a company that started out making testosterone pellets have been around forever. Okay. But just somebody got real good at savvy about marketing. And so Bioidentical was developed initially for men to give them testosterone. They created this testosterone deficiency syndrome thing. And, everybody needs testosterone, whatever. I don't treat men, so I don't know anything about that. Then they're like, why can't we give this to women? Well, okay. Our testosterone levels do slightly decline with age, and they do go down a little bit more with menopause, and women do benefit from testosterone supplementation, especially in hypoactive sexual desire disorder. So this really smart, brilliant marketing company, billion-dollar company is like, we should market these to women. That's smart marketing, right? So they start marketing to the med spas, to the OB-GYNs, and basically the doctors buy the pellets wholesale from the supplier, ship to their office. And so then you have to buy the pellets back from the doctor and then pay for the insertion. So they're putting Biest and Triest in these pellets, claiming it's safer, more natural. I have no reason to give a woman a pregnancy hormone if I don't have to. Weak estrogen, it doesn't work as well as estradiol. That's just marketing to me.
So you can't do estradiol in these pellets?
They don't make them with just estrogen, just doing Biest and Triest. So, okay. That's their choice, but there's no data. There's no studies. They do no studies. Here's this billion-dollar company that is not doing randomized controlled clinical trials to prove that their product is superior to others. So look,
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a woman feel bad because she found the only person in the world who would offer her hormone therapy, and it was in the form of a pellet. What I'm telling her now is, you don't have to pay that much. It's not better, safer, stronger. If you love it and you don't mind paying that amount, go for it. One other caveat about testosterone pellets. They are in their formulation packaging, which I have seen, are recommending to super physiologic dose a woman routinely between 150 and 250 per deciliter. Okay. A female normal healthy range is about 20 to 70.
So they're getting a lot.
25. And so they are routinely tripling, quadrupling what a woman would have. And they're like, oh, no, here's our evidence. We've done it to 1 million women and they feel great. I'm like,
so you're not you're not a fan of these.
where is I know they're having acne. I know they're losing hair. I know
I do see them. I see them with hair loss and acne.
there is a steady state of how high your testosterone levels are as a woman with increasing visceral fat, and it doesn't happen to men.
I mean, their bodies are great, they certainly have more energy but they're having all these other physical
You don't
attributes.
have to go that high.
Yeah,
They're
you don't have to go that
transitioning them to little men. What they're doing. And so I'm like, but you have better options, I think, than to be routinely overdosed and charged a 5x premium. You
Yeah.
can get good quality, safe, efficacious hormone replacement therapy without, and yeah, it's more convenient. It's once every 3 months, fine. But I'm seeing patients in my clinic, I'm checking their testosterone levels coming off of pellets 3, 4, 5, 6 months out, and they're still running 300 and 400.
Yeah,
So
that's really high. Wow.
massive overdosing going.
Yeah. So stick with estradiol or and progesterone because you need that to make sure you don't get, uterine cancer and all that. Well, I really want to talk about the Galveston diet. So tell us about that because I'm a huge fan of nutrition, when it comes to skin and certainly hormones. Tell us what that's founded, what is that based on and what is the Galveston diet?
Let's go back to like 2015. And so I was in late perimenopause. My brother had just died. I was working my tail off as a residency director.
And so how old were you? I just want to
I was 47.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm 55 now. So math. Yeah. 47, 48. And I had gotten off the pill to kind of see where I was hormonally right at the time when my brother got sick, and I went home to do his end of life care, and he died very quickly. He had end-stage hepatitis and liver failure from HIV and hepatitis. And I went through really bad grief and depression and all that. And I just kind of like didn't get it. I wasn't attuned with my body. I was in this fog, and I had brain fog, and I was like, you're just depressed, you're gaining weight because you're depressed, you're not eating. I wasn't working out, I wasn't doing all my usual habits. So then the fog lifts and the debrief lifts, and I'm like, okay, you're chubby, what's going on? Like you've always kind of been thin, and let's get this going. And then I realized I was menopausal, and all of my usual like tricks to get back to my little skinny self were not working. Okay. And I got incredibly frustrated, and I realized I sounded like my patients, who are the same age, where Mary Claire, I don't know what's going on. I'm not doing anything different. I'm eating right. I'm exercising. No. And I would pat them on the knee and say, work out more, eat less. Come on, girl. You're just, you park further from the grocery store while you walk. I mean, the same ridiculous stuff was coming out of my mouth because that's what I was taught to say until it happened to me. And I realized I am literally starving myself. I am literally working out twice a day. And yes, I'm losing a couple pounds, and it would just bounce right back on. Like I could not find homeostasis. Now, I was not being healthy. I was not eating health. I just was like, calories in, calories out. It's got to work. I was doing these crazy cleanses. I mean, like anything. So finally, my husband was like, honey, the kids are watching. I have 2 teenage daughters at this time. They've already watched me go through like the biggest loss of my life, my brother, and not do well. I was just a zombie walking around the house. And now I'm like obsessively calorie counting and skipping meals and working out all the time. And he's like, they're watching you. This isn't right. You're smart. Figure this out, So I called the nutrition department at the university I was employed at. And I was like, what is going on in menopause? Why is everyone gaining weight? And they're like, well, there's something going on with inflammation. That's probably something to do with hormones. Here's a bunch of articles. So they send me down all these rabbit trails of looking at inflammation and looking at nutrition. And I realized I don't know anything about nutrition. Not really. Like it was like
Yeah.
pornography, you know it when you see
Yeah.
it. Good
Yeah.
nutrition.
We don't get any training on that.
Nothing. So I decided to enroll in the culinary medicine program at Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
And I went online and I had to fly to New Orleans for some labs and stuff. But I just learned so much about nutrition and food allergies and like, you know, how it all works together. And then at the same time, I'm doing deeper and deeper dives in menopause education and realizing the CME that was put in front of me by the American Board of OB-GYN. When I say rarely, like we have 120 articles we're supposed to read every year to get recertified for our boards, maybe one on menopause out of, you know, I'm like, wait. 30% of the female population is in menopause.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
You know,
huge
like,
chunk.
why don't we get 30% of the research and the articles and the, you know, there's all this obscure stuff. It's like to get someone 0.5% healthier, you know, this like massive, and instead of like, where's the basic menopause care? Like, where's all the walking back of the WHI and hormone therapy and osteoporosis and what we know now about brain fog and brain health? And it's not there. And I'm like, whoa, you know. So then I learned about the North American Menopause Society and menopause.org, and I got involved there. I'm certified from there. So, you know, I just really was like, I got to step outside of what's expected of me if I'm going here. And this is where I want to go. This is where I'm being called to do menopause care. So I make this plan for myself and my patients on all this great stuff I learned in nutrition. I love the stuff I learned about intermittent fasting. Again, it's not for everyone, but it can be a really powerful tool for inflammation, not great for weight loss. I learned about the quality of nutrition, anti-inflammatory nutrition, the Mediterranean diet, like the blue zone, like why all that works and why habits are more important than one nutrient. And then I looked at what I call fuel refocusing, like really doing a deep dive on micronutrient of what most menopausal women are missing in their diets or not able to absorb. And so I put it all together into this plan that I made copies of down the road and I was handing it out to my patients. And they were all doing it and loving it. And then I shared it on social media. And that's when, you know, things kind of exploded for me. I was just playing. It was just a passion project that I was sharing with the world. And then some savvy business friends were like, you should make this a book or a program or something. And that's kind of how the Galveston diet was born. And
I love
as I
that.
began talking more and more about nutrition and menopause on social media, the floodgates open for people just that I was even saying the word menopause and like story after story after story of gaslighting and misunderstanding and not being able to find help or paying just tremendous amounts of money for basic hormone care. And, you know, and so then I just saw the conversation getting bigger and bigger, which is where we are now.
Yeah. I would say you're probably one of the leaders in raising awareness for menopause. And I love that it stemmed from your own experience, you know, and helping your patients.
I've
So
made some really incredible friends.
yeah.
Social media who are also in this space, and I'm learning as much from them as they are from me, and we're constantly texting and sharing articles and information, and like they keep me on my toes, and that's a beautiful thing. I have my menopause sisters now.
That's awesome. I love that. That's amazing. And I'm so happy that women are finally being heard, because I do feel that a lot of times they're sort of known as the whiny, you know, patient that comes in complaining of hair loss and fibromyalgia and all these other things.
Well, I'm going to tell you something really terrible. This is horrible. But this happened. And when I was in residency, you know, we had our gyne clinic. You'd have a woman coming in 30s, 40s with multiple vague complaints, right? Just like you said, hair loss, fatigue, lethargy, your periods are getting irregular, you know, whatever. And it was, I'm not going to tell you the gender of who it's. They'd walk down with their cowboy boots and be like, hey, I went to residency in Texas. Hey, you got a WW in room 4. Good luck with that.
A WW?
WW. Or WWW as a whiny white woman.
That's terrible.
It was horrible. It was horrible. And you know me, I don't want to get fired. I'm like, okay, you know.
Okay.
I'll do my best. You got 5 minutes. Get out of there. You can't help her. Nothing's gonna help her.
Oh, that's so sad. You can't help her. Well, now you can have estradiol patch and some progesterone.
Yeah.
All your symptoms are going to go away. So it's back to like nutrition. If somebody can't take hormones for whatever reason, what are some top 3 foods or methods in terms of the diet that can help?
Yeah. One, make sure you're getting enough fiber in your diet, and you'll probably have to track it because you don't know how to do it yet. Women are only getting half the amount of recommended fiber in their diets per day. And I'm not talking supplements. The majority of your fiber should come from food. Now, I sell supplement. I have my own fiber supplement. I'm drinking it right now. But like, you should be getting 25 grams from food in your diet per day. It
And what are
does.
some foods that high in fiber?
Sure. So legumes, so beans,
Mm-hmm.
nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, berries are super high. Avocado. I'm an
Yeah.
avocado day girl, pretty much.
Yes.
I can get 10, 12 grams of fiber a day from eating my avocado a day, plus healthy
Mm-hmm.
fats, plus vitamins, plus minerals, plus magnesium. So when you're getting high fiber foods, you're also getting this incredible encyclopedia of other minerals and nutrients that are keeping you healthy and functioning, at top notch while your body's going through this estrogen withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
Fiber, number two, sugars added in cooking, processing, and alcohol. And so
Mm.
if you limit those added sugars to less than 25 grams a day, you are going to have less insulin resistance. You are going to have less visceral fat, and you are going to have less inflammation.
And that goes for artificial sweeteners too.
Artificial sweeteners are a whole nother category. So yeah, I mean, like in Galveston diet, we talk about sugar substitutes. So like anything that's like chemically based, we're like, you probably should leave that aside. That should be rare, if ever. The Splenda, the stevia, it's not my favorite. And, we use a little bit of it to sweeten the fiber so it's palatable. Like that should be just a little bit here and there. But
Mm-hmm.
you need to train your body not to crave those sugars. It is an addiction. Like
Mm-hmm.
your body craves it. You can break it.
Mm-hmm.
So, the problem is you never, if you go hard for the artificial sweeteners or the plant sweeteners, you're never going to teach your body to like enjoy food without it being sweet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's number two. And then three.
Three is, I would say, vitamin D.
Vitamin D.
It's 80% of my patients are absolutely deficient in vitamin D. I'm not talking borderline. I'm
Yeah,
talking
mine
like
too. It causes a lot of hair loss in my
in the
clinic.
dregs. So I'm like, the first thing we need to do is get your vitamin D back to where it needs to be. And often, probably 60% of the time, they need a prescription strength, which is 50,000
Mm-hmm.
a week, just to get them up. And then maybe we can do 5,000 a day for maintenance. But I mean, just lifting them out of that vitamin D deficiency can do so much for a woman. And you can count on being vitamin D deficient in menopause.
Well, your body isn't as good. Your skin isn't as good as making vitamin D as you get older. And we're not outside as much as we were when we were younger either.
I was great about my face, but I mean, my neck is 20 years older than my face.
It's so true. We're so good with our faces, but the neck and chest skin is so much thinner and we just don't think about it as much. So it gets damaged a lot faster. So I wanted to ask a few questions that we got from the audience. What about these menopause testing kits that I see
Mm,
people selling
yeah.
at CVS?
I have an interview with Allure magazine about this exact thing. It's a maybe. Here's what I like about the Clear Blue or these menopause test kits. They're using an FSH level. And at an FSH of 25 or above, you are likely, very likely, if you have one several days in a row, in late perimenopause. And so the Clear Blue Easy Kit comes with 5 tests, and you do it over like 2 weeks or something. And it's really elegantly done, and they have great data to support it. Now, do I think every woman needs to run out and do one? No. But it can, if you have one test that's above 25 and the rest are normal, then you might be in early perimenopause. So it gives you some clue. But the most powerful thing is their app. They do a symptom score, collect your symptoms. They
Mm,
print out a form you can take to your doctor with the evidence and the articles to say, here. And I feel like that puts more power in the patient's hands. So
mm.
they're not paying me to say this, but I'm like, it starts a conversation. And so I think it's worth 25 bucks, to have some evidence in your hands with the medical research journal article showing a printout to a healthcare provider who you might be educating. Because like we said, we didn't learn about this stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So it gives women a voice, some evidence to gather before they go in to see their doctor. I love that. Okay, well, we're gonna let you go because I know you have a hard stop, but I want to play a game called Slay or Nay.
Okay.
And then these are just gonna be kind of rapid fire. Number one size fits all healthcare.
Oh, nay. No.
Being a social media influencer.
Ooh, slay.
Female Viagra.
No such thing.
No
That's
such thing.
okay. I mean, there is, but it's not for what you think, you know.
Estradiol? Does
Oh,
estradiol enhance your sex drive? Because I have patients that
no,
come
it
in,
doesn't.
I'm having
Testosterone.
orgasms again because I'm on
Well,
the
okay.
patch.
Topical estrogen can increase blood flow to the area and improve the sensitivity of the clitoris. And so that's a sleigh. But
Okay,
as far as what it does to your brain and desire, it doesn't help there.
I see. Kegels,
Absolutely sleigh.
essential oils for menopause treatment.
Nay, no evidence
Nay.
for it.
Yeah, I'm
But
not a
they're
fan of
relaxing. I like the way they smell.
settling for having a low libido.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're
It was
welcome.
so nice to connect with you. So tell our audience, where can they find you? I know you're a huge TikTok star and you're very active on social media. So what's your handle so people can?
Dr. Mary Claire on TikTok and Instagram.
I love it. And then we'll also link your Galveston diet so people can learn more and your website and your handles. Thank you so much for joining us.
So welcome. Take care.
Thank you.